Prophet said, if I were to command anyone to prostrate to anyone other than Allah, I would have commanded women to prostrate to their husbands. I want to know what happened that made the Prophet say this. I would like to know the history behind it, if there is more to this hadith that the Prophet said, which the brothers don't say.
Exactly. And this is one of the things that makes me angry as a dawah. When I hear so many men, Muslim men quote that hadith, and they quote it without giving the whole story. Because every Muslim should know we don't prostrate to anyone but Allah. And the Prophet didn't say that in the way in which these brothers try to tell you. Let me tell you what happened. Again, these were narcissistic times. Women were viewed as nothing more than an animal. Women were used for their beauty, for their wealth, for their family status. A man would marry a woman not because he was in love with her for anything. He would marry her because she was beautiful and she came from a noble family, or she inherited wealth from her father. So a man would marry a woman for those reasons and so he could take those things from her and then put her on the back shelf. That's why Khadijah radiallahu anhu refused to marry anyone after her second husband. She refused to marry the Abu Jahl and Abu Lahab and those other noble men, because she refused to be used for her status, because she was the daughter of Kuwailit. And that's all they wanted. They wanted to take from her what she inherited from her father, her title, her prestige, her wealth and honor. She refused. So what the Prophet did is, when he received the call to Islam, one of the first things he did was try to do away. This is when he was married to Khadijah. He tried to let the men know, because the Arabs were very tribal warriors. They were a warrior people, like the Vikings, like the Romans, like the Persians. That in those days, even the medieval, the Europeans, they were warrior people. Okay. And they would treat women so badly. Again, whenever a man fought another man, whoever won, his wife and children became the winner's property. That's how bad it was back then. Whenever one tribe fought against another tribe, the women and children would come out on the battlefield too. Because whoever the victor was took possession of their wives and their children. They became their property to do what they want with. So the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he received the call to Islam, one of the first things he mentioned, along with belief in Allah and all of that, was we got to stop being unjust to each other. We have to stop abusing the women. That's why you see all these hadiths about how he said the best of you are the ones who are good to your wives. You have to stop beating up on your women. The Arab men would beat their women. They treated them with no dignity, no respect. No respect. But it wasn't just the Arabs, the Vikings, nobody. The only people that came close to honoring women were the Romans, even though they abused them too. But they allowed, the Romans gave their women more rights. Okay. But the Arabs, they would abuse their women, beat them, hit them, treat them like dirt. So that's when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told them, your wives have rights over you. And when he went over the rights of good treatment and the right to be provided, maintained, and all that, the women, because again, these were narcissistic times, the women got arrogant. After the Prophet and told the people, this is when they migrated to Medina, when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam announced the rights that women had over their husbands, The women were narcissistic too. Arabs were a warrior people. Even the women were warriors. Okay? They started disobeying their husbands. They started disrespecting their husbands. So Umar came to the prophet and complained. He said, "Oh, prophet of Allah, you know, you've talked about the rights that our wives have over us, and now our women don't listen to us. They don't want to cook. They don't want to do nothing. They don't want to help us. They treat us bad." Some of the women are even raising their hand because Arab women were warriors too. Give us a pole and we'll go to town on you. You have to know how to, in those days, every woman that wanted to survive had to know how to wield a sword, wield a pole. Umar said some of the women are beating up on their husbands. So that's when the prophet ordered a meeting with the women. And he said, Allah has given you women rights, and you're going to transgress the limits and abuse it. He said, your husband has rights over you too. And that's when the prophet discussed the rights that men have over us. We cannot refuse to sleep with them because that's what happened. The women refused to have sex with their husbands. They weren't doing any of that. He said, sex is a right that your husband has over you. And then he started going over all the other rights. He said, if there would have been any person that Allah would have made prostrate to a person, it would have been a woman to a man, because men were created to be your leaders, your protectors, your providers. So you women have to respect your husbands. He did not say that to mean that women supposed to be slaves to a man. And it makes me angry when I hear brothers not give the real story, but they don't give it because they don't know it. Everything the prophet said happened for a reason. Something happened to make him say it. As I'm showing to you guys in my seerah of the heroines of Islam. When the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam married Aisha, Aisha was young. She was silly, but he was patient with her. Very patient with her. She would do a lot of silly things that kids do. And the people, even her father, Abu Bakr, would say, "Oh, Prophet of Allah, why don't you let me admonish her?" The Prophet said, "You are not going to admonish my wife. She may be your daughter, but she's my wife." He said, "Don't you know, Abu Bakr, that the best of men are those who are good to their wives?" That's where that hadith came from. Because Abu Bakr wanted to admonish Aisha. He wanted to discipline her because she was yelling at the Prophet. She was a little kid. She threw a tantrum. "Well, I'm not going to do that. I want you to do this." And Abu Bakr grabbed her and said, "You don't talk to him that way." And the Prophet separated him and said, "Wait a minute. She's my wife, not your daughter. The best of us are those that are good to our wives." So every hadith or every saying that the Prophet said, he said it for a reason. That's why it's important to know the history. But what we have today are men taking that one hadith about pus and prostrating. Aisha would have never prostrated to the Prophet Muhammad. If the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam commanded her to prostrate to him, she would have told him to go suck on an egg. Just like when Allah sent down the verses of the Quran, vindicating her, proving her innocent of the adultery, her mother, her father grabbed her and said, "Thank the Prophet Muhammad." She looked at him and said, "Why should I thank him? He didn't vindicate me. Allah did." She said, "I will go and make 2 rakats to my Lord." That hadith is Bukhari and Muslim. So I hate to hear these brothers use that. because the prophet, none of his wives would have prostrated to him if he had ordered it, not, and definitely not Khadijah. So the brothers today use that hadith because these are men who also suffer with narcissism. 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 These are men that want to be worshiped by their wives. Maybe those brothers who make those statements are lonely men. Many of them probably have 2, 3, 4 wives, but none of their wives spend time with them because they're too busy dealing with the children that the man impregnated them with. So these men don't have no affection. They don't have no attention. They wish their wives would worship them. They wish their wives would lick their pus. But their wives are too busy taking care of all those babies that they impregnated them with. So maybe that's why they like to misuse that hadith. I don't know. Or maybe they married a woman like Laila Sheba. I ain't got no kids and ain't gonna have none. Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen. But I call a spade a spade. If you're worthy of being complimented, I'll be the best wife in the world to you. I'll give you everything you need. I'll build you up. I'll be Khadijah and help you to learn and recognize your worth. I'll have your back. I'll have your front. And I'll be right there with you on the battlefield, Aki. And I'll be your kitten where I need to be your kitten. But don't think you're going to fall short on what I need. You fall short on what I need, you got to bounce, brother. You can be replaced. Hello? Maybe they got a wife like that. I don't know why these brothers misuse that hadith. But that's the story behind it. The prophet was checking the women, letting the women know Allah has given you women rights. Why would you transgress the limits now by becoming what your husbands were? You women are doing to your husbands what you complained of them doing to you. 2 wrongs don't make a right. Islam is balance. And that's where that hadith comes from. I hope it's clear. Did I explain that well, everybody? Is it clear?